Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Today on the podcast, we're diving into leadership, legacy, and the evolving role of the fire service with someone whose career is really impressive because it's spanned continents, crisis, and command at the highest levels. Chris is a serving chief for the Corporation of Municipality of Chatham, Kent in Canada, and he's worn just about every hat in the fire service, from firefighter on the ground in Merseyside to leading complex counter-terrorism and hazardous materials operation to becoming a fire paramedic, chief of Chatham, Kent in Canada, and along the way he's commanded marine and aviation incidents, lectured on international stages about terrorism, multi-agency response, and shaped policies that honestly reach far beyond the fireground. But today in our conversation, it's not just about titles or accolades, it's about the human side of leadership. Chris demonstrates loads of vulnerability and honesty in this. We dig into authenticity, we look at the courage it takes to admit mistakes and how much we can learn from them. We explore the balance between personal and professional life, the double-edged sword that is vulnerability, and what it means to lead with values rather than just rules. This episode is a reminder that the fire service, hopefully, is more than just hoses and helmets as much as we enjoy it, and its impact is about trust and service to the community. So whether you're a recruit just starting your career or a chief officer shaping strategy, maybe looking for a change, you'll find some wisdom here on navigating leadership in a way that leaves a lasting legacy. Please welcome to the podcast, Chris Case. I'll see you on the other side. So when we were connecting to start with, I know you spoke about some of the people you'd listened to and the correlations that you took between, some of the stuff, Gerard Mann as an example, and also when I've mentioned quite a few times about this element of betraying our dreams for that copy and paste career. What really stood out to me, brother, was when I was looking at your LinkedIn and your career, and you were kind enough to share some PDF stuff with us before this. You've really taken some awesome hard left turns that, with the greatest of respect, most people that had then done the same amount of time that you had done, as an example, you did 25 years in Merseyside, as we said on the intro before this. Talk to me about what has been that itch within you when you're like, I'm going to go left. I need to keep challenging myself. Because most people would be like, Chris, just carry on doing what you're doing, brother.
I think I've got a famously short attention span, would be the one way of putting it. I recall even when I was riding the pumps back in the 90s, I loved the work today. I loved riding the trucks, but there was always something else. I was always eager to just go and do something else. I get bored really, really quickly. And if something came up, it was always, yeah, I'll have a go at that. There was never a question. And you've got to be blessed with a very forgiving partner, and you've got to be blessed with the fact that, you see, because you say, well, listen, I'm just going to take off and I'm going to spend a month in Las Vegas with the bomb squad. Just one of the conversations. These things come up, and I always say to officers, grab them, even if nothing happens, even if you apply for something and you get 1,000 rejection letters. At least you can sit there and go, I've tried to do something different. And I don't criticize anybody who's followed the traditional path, each to their own. But for me, it was always, I'm at that position now where I've been here for 4 years, and I'm going to stay here, but I'll be looking for other things as well, just to keep things interesting. Otherwise, you become stale. Your conversation stale, your opinion stale, your experience is stale.
Yeah, because nothing else is standing still, is it? I always say to people, when people are like, I'm just taking a bit of time, they're mentally parked. And I'm like, no, you haven't, because everything else is continually moving forwards. But also, isn't it difficult when you do hear people saying that, the fire service or the fire department or even the first responder sector, they say it's boring. And I'm like, the fire service is boring for boring people. But also you said about opportunities. I get invited to some cool stuff, and I hope to be able to replicate some of the wonderful things you've done in your career, but I'm very much in my infancy by comparison. But people don't know the amount of no's you get. Do you know what I mean? They go, all they see is Chris going and doing this thing. Oh, you went out and did a week with the bomb squad. Oh, you went out to Colorado. You've gone and done this great course. You've no idea how many times I got kicked in the nuts and said, no thanks, Chris. Actually, it's not really your turn, mate. Actually, so help me square that circle. Because a lot of people get one no, and they're like, you know what? Ram this. I feel stupid. Everybody knows I applied for that secondment. Everybody knows this year alone, I applied for the Fleur Lombard bursary, the Winston Churchill that's not a bursary, fellowship. Didn't get either of them. I was supposed to be going to Nepal in November for a couple of weeks to do some work with search and rescue. Didn't get that. Wanted to do a secondment to NFCC, National Resilience. Didn't get that. And nobody really knows about all of these no's. But like, how do you sustain that optimism, that muscle that keeps you trying to seek different things? MSA are supporting us on today's podcast, and I chose to partner with them because I've been wearing this stuff for nearly 20 years, and they are the global leader in development, manufacture, and supply of incredible, safe products that really protect people, not just our communities out there, but also first responders, most importantly, all over the world. Get yourself over to MSA and have a look at it. The high-performance protective clothing for emergency services responders. They also partner with us on the UK Pink Firefighters. That's because we love them. The helmets with the reflective visor, the F1XF, absolutely epic helmet. And not forgetting how they improve firefighter safety through their connectivity in the connected firefighter platform. MSA are always pushing the envelope, and it's a real privilege to be able to continue to grow our partnership together. So whether it's your PPE, your bunker gear, your helmets, your SCBA, your thermal imaging, your Luna, or your portable gas detection, both of us know that this equipment needs to work. It needs to be high quality, reliable, and dependable in the moment. And that's why I use MSA, because they know what's at stake.
I feel it's like going on holiday. If you treat the flight as good as the holiday, then you'll get something out of it. You know, where does your holiday start? Does it start at the airport, or does it start when you land near the other end? For me, it always starts at the airport, the planning. So I keep a folder, Pete. I keep a grounding folder with hundreds of rejection letters in it.
Nice.
Literally, I keep the folder. And there's times where you go through it because that will give you the feedback you need. I always used to push people for feedback. Well, you know what? I used to get really irritated when you'd apply for, government secondment were probably the best one. Well, can you give me a bit of feedback? Well, we don't give feedback. Well, why not?
Right.
And you just keep pushing. And in the end, someone will go, okay, this is what went wrong and this is what went wrong. And then you've got.
They won't send it officially, though, will they? Sometimes they usually go, "I'll take a call with you, Chris," which is fine. I'll have a call. There seems to be this scared to death, and you don't see this in the private sector. Like in the private sector, in an old job I used to do, we would give feedback. Like if you were trying to go for a leadership position, you've ticked all the boxes, as in you've done all the courses, but actually, Chris, you're not very empathetic. No one actually likes you, or people don't want to follow you. You're not a good leader. We would say that in the private sector. We'd say we'll put you on a couple of 3-month things where you're going to give you a project, you're going to lead a team and do this. But we would tell them that. Whereas in the fire and rescue service, I think we're very nervous about, and it probably worse in the States or in Canada, but in the UK, we've started to get this where we're scared to death of a grievance, scared to death of somebody. Yeah. So we fail the person by not giving them any feedback at all. Or we give them some arbitrary stuff like, oh, you failed to use the STAR mechanism. And you're like, really? Come on. Now help me. How can I get better for the next thing? It's okay. But also, even if you use the word feedback, if we did like a word association game, Chris, do you want some feedback? And somebody'd be like, oh, you mean you want to tell me I'm rubbish? Or you're going to give me feedback is not something, but life is always giving you feedback, isn't it? It's whether or not you're listening to it.
And even the process of going for an interview, I say I do quite a bit of mentoring now, which I really enjoy. Must be my age. And I always talk about the mistakes. To be able to talk about your mistakes, and I've pulled some whoppers out of the hat, I mean, the times, where I went to an interview and just completely blew the interview. And at the end, I even said to the guy, listen, I know I've blown this. And he looked at me and went, yeah. I said, can we chat afterwards? Of course we can. It was that, like you say, that level of empathy going, I'm crap and I know I'm crap and we both know I've been crap. So at least kind of. Yeah. So I always found that to at least be trying to do something different, even when you felt like you was in a rut, even when you felt like, well, I don't know where this job's going, And I'm incredibly grateful for some of the bosses I had. I mean, Dan Stevens as a chief, probably one of the best chief officers you could ever have. You could have a conversation with him. You could have a real empathetic, down-to-earth conversation with the man. But I was also grateful for some of the bad bosses I had, because you learn just as much from them. So if you're happy to go into this as an experience for learning, and the secret to it all always is not to beat yourself up. There's times where you go, oh, you idiot, you could have done this, you could have done. That's negative. That's never going to work for you. I mean, moving to Canada took me 6 years to move here. 6 years of trying and trying and trying, to the point where my own wife was saying, I'll believe it when I see it.
Oh,
But you
bless.
can't lose hope. If you're going to do something, you just keep doing it. Because even if you show up to work on a Monday morning, you've got the
Yeah.
best job in the world. You're in the fire service, best job
Yeah.
in the world. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to make it a little better.
I always think the worst version of our day, and I apologize, I never want to embarrass the guests, but I love this phrase, and we use it on the podcast quotes all the time. I'm like, I apologize, I'm not trying to embarrass you. Being in the fire service is a bit like sex. When it's good, it's great, but even when it's rubbish, it's still pretty good. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, it's a good job. It's a really good job, folks. You know, with the guys and girls in the job, even if you're not getting the thing you want, even if you got a no, the worst day you're having in this job, it's not really a job. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of this
You know,
stuff, I constantly turn to my crew and I'm like, getting paid for this. We're getting paid to do this thing. We're out here doing swiftwater rescue. We're out here abseiling off this quarry. We've been let into this listed beautiful building that everyone has to pay £100 to do a tour of, and we're doing a bloody risk visit. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, we get paid to do that. It really is a very strange thing. But you started your career, as people are hearing the intro, way back in Merseyside, and you spoke about Dan Stevens there. Like, I love Dan. He is Marmite, but then again, so am I. Some people don't like that. Some would term it old school. Some would term it militaristic. But you know where you stand with someone like Dan, and I quite like that. And he is a very knowledgeable individual, in my personal opinion. I'm sure he does lots of things wrong, but we seem to be shifting in our leadership models now. But I also don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe Dan, maybe you. I don't know you very well yet. Are a little bit too much. But I have heard you interact with one of your colleagues today, just before we started recording. You have a very soft mannerism about you. You have a great way of flexing your style. And a lady entered the room a minute ago just to have some questioning with you. And that leadership flex style. So people think they hear like Dan on a podcast. And it's like, oh, I bet he's like this. No, he's not. It's just when he gets excited and passionate about something like me. But how do we maintain that little bit? Because, in fact, something you mentioned before we came on today, this whole creating opportunities for people outside of the sector to join our sector. And some of it's done because we think we're a bit too old school. We think we're a bit too militaristic. I personally don't necessarily think that's the case, but I also do acknowledge and appreciate the neurodiversity, not to play buzzword bingo, of looking at problems in a different way. But you were saying before you did some great mentoring with people coming into these roles, and it's a passion of yours now. Talk for me a little bit around bringing different people into the sector, but also developing within the sector, I suppose.
I think there's a question: is do you want to teach a firefighter to be a leader, or do you want to teach a leader to be a firefighter? And I think the two are not mutually exclusive. So, I
Love
mean, I
that.
look at the model that we have here. It's completely different to the UK. I've had to get used to it. Apart from squirting water on fire, everything else is different, reasonably.
Okay.
I always tell the joke that when I left Merseyside in 2016, two things were being debated: BA sets and 24-hour shifts. And the first day I arrived in Chatham, Kent, we were talking about BA sets and 24-hour shifts. But
Oh,
apart from that,
God,
it's all
really?
different. And I think we have a model here where we've got 460 operational staff,
Uh-huh.
and 360 of them are volunteers. They're retained.
Wow.
And a lot of them are farmers. A lot of them have got different skills, so they can progress through. I've got 4 assistant chiefs. So we run a 2,000 square kilometer area with 19 stations, 60 odd trucks,
Jesus.
450 people. We run the EMS service and we run emergency management as well, even though EMS is outsourced. And we've got 4 managers that runs the entire lot. So we've got a command team of 5 people, a chief, 4 assistant chiefs, and then everybody else is a captain.
Really?
And it's quite a way of
That's
doing business, to be
nice.
honest. I'm trying to fix that a little now and bring in a middle management team. But
I know, but
you've
there's pros
literally
and
got
cons for
people.
both, surely, because the messy middle is sometimes where things get confusing. But also that whole span of control analogy for each of your 5 team members, including yourself, the cognitive load on that, I imagine, is pretty huge.
It does do. I mean, there's obviously we've got the captains on duty, either be full-time or retained. There's always one assistant chief on duty, and there's always a chief on duty. So it's
Okay.
like every other chief, it's a 24-hour job. And sometimes when we get the tornadoes or the heavy snowstorms or the heat waves or the flooding or even the fire every so often, it can get a little taxing.
Mm.
But we've now got 4 assistant chiefs, 2 of which came up through the full-time, 2 of which came up through the volunteer sector. And the skill sets that we have as a command team is unbelievable. I've got a qualified paramedic. I've got a qualified IT engineer. We've got somebody who used to be involved in building maintenance and structural maintenance. And we've got someone who was, we'll talk about Sean later, someone who survived cancer and came through as a training officer. So when we meet as a team, the 5 of us, as long with Amy, our assistant who keeps us all in check, there's very little things in the room that we can't talk about. So there is that aspect of it, is that you bring in that breadth of command. But I report directly to the mayor and council, and I report through the chief administrative officer for admin. So it's very much, for me, when you talked about how do we balance all of this, I think there's a lot to be said when we talk about emotional intelligence, is the fact that you're seen out there with your gear on. You stood next to your firefighters when it's tough, and you stood with your firefighters when it's good. But to pick up on your last comment, I always say one thing to a new firefighter: you've just won the lottery of life. Try not to mess it up. And sometimes I don't say mess, but
Yes.
you're literally in a position now where you can become something bigger than yourself. And we all talk about this altruistic stuff and everything else, but people realize they put the uniform on and you become something else. Police officer becomes a police officer. A paramedic is the bringer of life. You become something that enhances your personality. The thing that I cannot understand, the thing that really drives me insane, and I see on both sides of the Atlantic, is people who follow the negative path. They get about 10 years in the job and suddenly, oh, this job's rubbish. And, you hear the phrase, the job's, and you're just like, for why? And that was one of the reasons why I decided to go and do other things, because I never wanted to get to that position where it's just, and I know it's quite a trendy
How
thing
have
to
you
be,
avoided
especially
that
in a
though?
group.
Because I have to guard against that. I'm almost quite vicious with it, to be honest. Not to people, but I'm vicious in my own mind. And if I'm around someone for too long, it's the old value association. You lie down with dogs, you wake up with fleas, and all that sort of jazz. Whoever you're around. Same reason I don't listen to the radio or watch the news, because it's bleeding into my space. It's bleeding into my mind.
Yeah.
And people go, no, it's not. I don't really listen to it. You are listening to it. That's how advertising works. Okay. Whether you think you do or you think you don't, it's going in. These people, these opinions, these mindsets, they are bleeding in to your mental blueprint. And you've got to stand on guard at the edge of your mind, of that mental fortress, to keep these people away. But also, some people feel like, but the people I work with are the people I work with. I can't do anything about it. And before you know it, they do take on that blame thrower, that energy vampire. And it can be so easy to forget the reason that you joined the job. But how I know it's so hard to connect the dots looking backwards, and you're not going to pretend to give us a template, but how can people do it? Because people will be listening now, brother, and they'll be like, oh God, this is hurting because he's talking about me. And obviously not talking about anybody, but it's like, it will feel like it's like, yeah, I've been on this station for 10 years. I'm lost interest. I'm bored. Nothing's new. We've just had Steve and Sally join the watch. They're really negative, and they might feel trapped. How have you shortcutted that or avoided it? Or has it even been a conscious thing?
I've been very lucky in the fact that because of the various places I worked, I saw different workplaces. I saw how the police worked for 3 years. I got
But
a bit
also,
of
I'm
an
going to challenge you,
insight
because that
into
wasn't just luck, because you put yourself in those positions.
I got myself, seeing how the military worked, seeing how private sector worked. And I think there's 2 aspects to this. First of all, there's personal responsibility, and then there's command responsibility.
Okay.
And if you find yourself in a position where you're an individual in a group and you become to feel more isolated, then it's time to get out. It's time to refresh your surroundings. It's like sitting in the bath as it's gone cold. You're in a cold bath right now. You're not going to warm it up. Get yourself out, go and get yourself something else. And also, I also noticed it's very much, no matter how much we say this, it's driven by the leader. It's driven by the station officer, the watch manager, the captain. They are the barometer for this. And I've seen good ones and I've seen bad ones. Probably the same yourself, And there's the ones who not only perpetuate that range of emotions, but lead it, engage in it, dwell in it. And there's a lot to be said for tenure. I know when I look at some of the organizations, they purposely bring in tenure to ensure that things are refreshed, that these bad habits don't entwine. So for me, it was really I found myself in that position a couple of times, and I found myself getting a reputation for being a bit negative, and it, that was a difficult point because
I bet that was
you feel like
uncomfortable. Yeah.
you feel like
Yeah.
you've betrayed yourself to a certain extent.
Mm.
That's not me. That's what I'm becoming, but it's not me. So that's why I've always tried and find, well, let me go and find something else to do. Let me refresh my perspective. Even if I'm still in the same job, let me go and find something on the side just to refresh me.
Have you found it to be different? You've done a lot of traveling. We've read a little bit of your CV before we came on today for the listener. You've gone out and about a lot. People have this thing of normalizing or justifying things by like groupthink, by saying, "Oh, everyone's like that, Chris." Everyone. And I'm like, is it like this in other countries? Because I'm very proud to be from the UK, but I do think as a nation we can be quite self-deprecating. We don't cheer for each other very much. I feel like if you were in the UK and you said you came on, watch, whatever, so I've just got that promotion, or I've just my side business, we've just got a 30 grand contract. Some people would be like, "Oh, good for you, Chris. Ego, mate. Yeah, pride comes before a fall." Yeah. Whereas I think
Yeah.
like when I've spent time in the States, people will be like, "Jesus, Chris, high five, brother. Tell you what, let's get some beers in, my friend. Well done. Proud of you, my man. You're kicking ass. Jesus, wow." Like, am I wrongfully tagging that onto the UK? Have you seen it differently across different nations? This element of pride and supporting and celebrating each other.
I don't think you're wrong at all. I find we as Brits we like an underdog. We don't want anybody. How many times have you heard someone say, "Well, I've done this," and you get that old fast show response, which was nice. It's that type of thing.
Yeah,
You know. But you're right. When you look in the States and everything else, a completely different mindset. A completely
yeah.
different mindset. There's still the negative aspects,
Yeah.
but it's framed in a way that is all about the job. And
Mm.
I talk to a lot of firefighters. I mean, our own firefighters downstairs, that we have our own battles, we have our own labor relations issues. But the one thing that we've been able to do here, and again, I take a leaf off from Dan Stevens, is make it all about the job. The only advice I ever give to a captain who comes in going, the watch are not really getting a lot. Get the gear on. Make it all about the job. If you can refocus everything towards the flashing lights and the sharp end, everybody comes together. If you can
Yeah.
actually come up with one cause, and if you're at a quiet station where you're not getting a lot of calls, idle hands, keep everybody
Idle
busy.
hands.
You know,
I think it's even worse for
idle hands.
firefighters, because I think we're natural problem solvers. And I always say, if you've solved the big problems, like, oh, we've got a big exercise today, or we've just had a lot of calls, or we're a very, very busy station. When you solve the big problems, you will look for other problems and you'll start going, that toilet paper's shit. Well, you know what? That thing that Chris does absolutely drives me mad. I cannot stand him. Jesus, he's put his mug there again. Or his locker's always left open and his wet towel. And you're like, some of the stuff that comes up in station management meetings, you're like, fellas, ladies, are we having this conversation? Come on. There's bigger problems to solve. Like some of the cancer awareness stuff, we've seen this grow a lot in the UK. And I don't want it to lose its energy because I feel like we've talked a lot about it. We've tipped the hat to it.
Yeah.
We've written it on some walls. We've given a lot of values speeches about it. We had a guest on out in Saudi Arabia. I sat with a Canadian team of firefighters. Oh my goodness. And the young lady whose name's going to escape me, she was talking to us about their annual health screening and the extent to which they do. Like, you'll have a great lens for this. Talk to me about health and well-being that you've seen in different places across the pond, and then kind of connect the dots from. And again, we say this is an aspirational sense in a way to try and give people some ideas and some encouragement, perhaps, because you've seen things from quite a few angles now.
The one thing that blew me away when I arrived here was the level of cancer prevention.
Okay.
I've never walked into a fire station in Canada and smelt smoke. So you come on in the morning and you know that the night shift have had a job because you can smell it. No,
I used to like that though.
I can
Isn't that
walk in on
stupid?
a
Stupid.
yeah. You know exactly what they've had and how many people have been there. You can walk in the station. We had a factory fire last weekend. And again, like I said, the way that we fight fires here is poles apart from the way that you fight fires.
Okay.
But again, I walk through the door and every set of bunker gear is on the dryers. All the gear is laid out, been decontaminated. The trucks are absolutely clean. Dirty gear doesn't get back on the trucks. We talk about cancer prevention at least every day. Every firefighter has either got 2 sets of gear or access to a specialised extractor, at least 2 fire hoods. We went to Queen's Park, our parliament, as fire
Hmm.
chiefs. Our version of Fire Chiefs Council went and met with the Premier, and all we wanted to talk about was cancer screening and reducing the age that people can start getting cancer tested. We brought on a medical doctor as part of our command team, and the guy that leads all of this for us is a guy called Sean McRoberts, who is one of the quietest, most softly spoken expert firefighters I've ever known. He went through this as a young man. He went through a brain tumor, and then he came forward and developed, and he drives all of this. He's our health and safety training chief, and he can speak with such passion, but so quietly. So when we go out there and we said, even like, we've got stations which don't run a huge number of calls,
Hmm.
but they've all got access to clean gear. And it's not perfect, Pete. We do have situations where it'll go on scene, and right now, the biggest faux pas that you could see is if you were sat on a pump and the guy jumped on next to you with all the dirty gear and the dirty helmet, that would be as bad as smoking in the cab. He or she would be thrown out of the truck. Get out the truck.
Wow.
There's none of this swaggering around with the dirty gear on. Clean gear is healthy gear. And then we could get into PFAS and everything else. But we have presumptive legislation that if you've worked in an area long enough, and I don't qualify for this because I've worked in the UK, but if
Mm.
you've worked for 10 years and you get a prostate cancer, well, that's covered under workers' comp. That's
Wow.
that's completely covered. And the best bit of all is enshrined in law, our version of the health and safety executive will come to your stations once a year and inspect you for cancer prevention. And if you're not doing what they think you should be doing, they'll write you a legally binding order, and you've got to get it done.
Ooh. So what's the extent of
And
the inspections that it would give then? Sorry.
well, you know what? I can supply you it. We have the province of Ontario has a cancer prevention checklist that every fire department has to follow in terms of keeping clean gear available, in terms of clean areas, in terms of shower facilities, where you can and can't wear bunker gear in the station, what level of extraction you have to go on for cleaning, what you do with the dirty water. It is extensive,
Mm.
absolutely extensive. It's probably our biggest driver right now. We're about to replace everybody's fire helmet just so we can make sure that there's a helmet that we can quickly change the innards out of the soft pieces.
There's a
Some
few
stations
stations
have
I've
gone,
seen that are just having pool helmets. So they don't have a set. You don't have your own helmet. Like they just have them, and I'm not sure. I get it, but also I'm not sure fully. Like if you got a station of 20 firefighters, you'll only ever have 5 or 6 on shift at any one time. So they've probably only got 10 helmets, and then they've got a pool of decon ones where you can change them out. I'm not sure. I've not got any hair, so fair enough. But the whole head lice, and I'm sure they navigate their way around that one. But yeah, when we talk about issuing everybody another set of kit, issuing everybody another helmet, this stuff can get very expensive very, very quickly. Um,
oh yeah,
and
millions.
how do we make that? How have you seen them square that circle? Like, have they managed to? How have they made it sustainable? But also, like, I suppose if we're saying it's a priority, it's a goddamn priority, isn't it? You can't say it's a priority only if it's convenient.
If it's the law, you've got to do it. And here,
Yes.
it's the law. So I go, interesting enough, here, everything is funded by council tax. So paramedics is 50% council tax, 50% provincial funding. Fire is 100% council tax. So every time I go and try and spend money, I'm spending the taxpayers' money.
Mm.
But you're still going to council at budget time saying, we have to do this under cancer prevention. This keeps our firefighters safe. And to be fair to our councillors, they've never said no to me. They've never said no. Every firefighter has got this opportunity. But you raise an interesting point with helmet. You talk about culture. I famously once said that the best fire helmet I ever wore was a Galley. The
Okay.
chances of me trying to give a North American firefighter anything except a traditional fire helmet with the badge on the front, that would be career suicide. It would. I remember once getting into a debate online with somebody about fire helmets, and a guy from America referred to the Boston Tea Party before he would wear a European-style fire helmet. I
Oh,
mean, we've
God.
got some really, really passionate people. I mean, Paul
Why? What's
Brentwood's
their
probably come
argument
across
for
these
it? Sorry.
people. It's tradition. They wear the traditional helmets. Some people like to wear the leather helmets. So we've gone down the route of saying, listen, we need to change the helmet. So we've come up with a model that is the best of both worlds. It's not a Euro style, it's a semi-traditional style, and we're going to try and make sure that everybody's standard. It's not unusual. It wasn't until the past few years that people would buy their own helmets. So people would come to work wearing the PPE that they bought themselves. That used to be very common. It's still common in a lot of places. Their
It
own
is,
gloves, their own
yeah.
leather.
You see that in
Completely
America.
alien to
Like,
me.
they don't necessarily buy their own helmets, but
Yeah.
they buy a lot of their own bits and gear and stuff like that. Like, if it hasn't been under Pure and Lola and hasn't been through a long, drawn out procurement process, like, if you hurt yourself, game over. We didn't issue you with that.
Oh,
How do they justify that over there? Does it just null and void everyone's life insurance? Or, I mean, talking in the past now, it might have been
no,
before your time, but
we get a little bit. We stop people buying their own PPE, but I made a comment to a local interviewer a few months ago because we were talking about the rising cost of fire trucks, and I made the point that if you look at it in North America, especially in Canada, the fire service is probably the country's biggest charity because a lot of departments, not ours, a lot of the smaller departments, the volunteers, true volunteers who do it completely unpaid, they fundraise for everything themselves, they buy everything themselves, they train themselves, and they're staffed by people who leave work, a bit like they're retained, and there's employers who just let their staff go to fight fires. It's a huge charity. But here we had to draw the line at, you know what, if you want to put a leather fire boots, pay us the difference between the rubber boots and the leather boots, and we'll issue you with leather fire boots. So we're not spending the taxpayers' money, but you're still getting a product that is approved. But
I'd like to
there's
see
a
more
lot
of
of
that for like total transparency. Hikes is a partner of the podcast, so it sounds like a harsh sell, but lots of other companies are out there. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're great boots. And when I see the police model in the UK, and they just issue them something like 60, 80 quid, and you buy
we'll buy your
yourself
own.
a set of boots that adhere. And if you want to spend 300 quid, because boots, helmets, little things like this, if you've got rubbish boots, and I know we're talking about a very small problem here, but it's a big problem. You're going to be working in the job for 40, 50 years, and you're working on concrete station, floors all the time, and you've got a rubbish pair of boots, especially for like a police officer, but even for firefighters, that's going to ruin your day, and it'll ruin your career eventually because your knees and your your knees and your ankles just going to be smashed. Like how crazy did that feel going over there and seeing the difference? Because Merseyside's a big service. They do a lot of things very well. One of the larger ones in the UK. So, you didn't come from a rubbish place where they had a rinky-dink, budget or anything like that. You came from some high. Merseyside's one of the only places that still gets their recruits to run. I love it. It's weird. Nowhere else does it. They've all got rid of it.
We'll talk about our recruits later.
Firefighters, police officers, and first responders are now stepping into environments wired with more high voltage than ever before. Everything from electric vehicles to solar panels feeding direct current through compromised structures, overhead power lines, and illicit drugs factories with improvised lethal bypasses. Any single strike in the wrong place in this type of environment can turn things fatal very quickly, and that is exactly why we've partnered with Jafco. You already know who Jafco are. They have been relied upon for decades for sturdy, get-the-job-done equipment, and they are not resting on their laurels. They are evolving to face the challenges first responders are handling today through their insulated tool range. These are purpose-built for the scenarios where contact with hidden electrical hazards isn't just possible, it is increasingly likely. Their insulated tools are engineered for real-world abuse and use, designed to keep firefighters, police officers, and all first responders alive in environments where electrification is outpacing policy, equipment, and training. And you know this. This is the kind of innovation our sector needs and the kind of investment organizations should be stepping up to support if we are serious about protecting first responders from fatal consequences. So a massive thank you to Jafco for backing the podcast and backing the crews on the ground. Go check them out, learn what they're doing, and bring that conversation into your service because this isn't about the future, it's about right now. Okay.
The last job I had in Merseyside before I came to Canada was I was put in charge of technicals. I was in charge of workshops, uniforms, equipment. And I was amazed just how little money we have here. for the service we
Oh,
deliver
really?
anyway. That's not bad. I mean, we run fire rescue, paramedics, and emergency planning for about $27 million a year, and that's for a 2,000 square
Wow.
kilometer.
That is
But we
not a
don't
lot
have
of
to worry. We
money.
don't have the cost of trucks. We don't have the cost of stations because that's run by the municipality. So we run very much. It's like a Shire Brigade model where we're part of the municipality. We're a department of the municipality, so we
Mhm.
don't have to worry about HR. We don't have to worry about finance and things like that.
Okay.
That's pure operational. But the one thing I've noticed is you're right. We wanted to bring in this thing to allow people to have the boots that they wanted because they're not getting relieved.
Yeah.
If they're at a job for 12 to 18 hours, they're at a job for 12 to 18 hours. We might be able to swap a few people out,
Yeah.
but we haven't got an endless box of firefighters to open in the rural area.
Yeah.
And we just want people to be comfortable. But the whole thing with helmets, you just have to go online and the arguments between MSA have brought in a European style helmet. They call it the fighter pilot model.
Yeah. I've seen it.
And I keep threatening people we're going to buy it. If
Why?
I ever
What's the
want to
pros and
invoke
cons?
discipline. And for me, I find that if once we finally move to a rescue squad concept, then we'll
Mhm.
probably be using that type of helmet
Yeah, we'll
because
have
we
to.
won't be able to have two or three different helmets for people.
No.
So,
I'm
but
so,
here
I'm
it's all
astonished the
tradition.
Americans still have their helmets. They're bloody stupid. I like them. I've got one. Lovely. They look amazing from the heritage to the
Mm.
symbol, what it stands for. But the functionality of it's stupid, in my personal opinion. It's bloody huge.
I,
Heavy things.
I have one myself. I mean, I keep my helmets above the office because it starts with the old cork helmet and ends up with the thing with the big leather badge on the front.
I see
But
that. It was back in your
it's
time.
about,
Take us there for a minute because you used to paint that every time. Didn't you just have to paint it when you
oh, you
come
got
out on the squad yard? Talk to us about the cork helmets and
every
when you
time there's a
joined.
divisional inspection, bright yellow paint used to come out for divvy drill and divisional inspection. Absolutely. So I think personally for me, it's about leadership. You go out and the chief's on scene, you know,
Mm.
which is the definition of chaos. Chief has arrived on scene, CHAOS. And you go out and I still find it quite quirky. I really do. I find that the bunker gear is completely different. It's got integrated harnesses so you can be extracted from the job if needs be. It's got two
Do they have
layers so you
bailout
wash it.
packs?
We have bailout packs, yeah. That was the other concept, is the idea that
Talk
someone's
to
going
us
to
about
bail
that
out of
because
a
that's
fire.
still very foreign to a lot of people in the UK. They have no idea what on earth that is and why they would do it.
I I'm trying not to cause. I'm not trying to trying not to cause anyone hardship here. I still that's one of the concepts I still struggle with because they do bailout drills. They go down the
Mm.
ladder, and I was like some bright-eyed recruit when I first arrived. Well, why'd you do that? Why?
Yeah.
Well, do you not do that? God no, bailing out. You just walk out the building. But then you start looking at things like the building construction. A
Okay.
lot of timber framed. And I remember the first fire I ever went to, Pete. Still remember it to this day. I've been here for about a month, and I was allowed out on my own as the on-call chief. And I went to a little town called Merlin, which is about 10 miles away. And there was a house in the middle of the field burning down. And I remember thinking to myself, that's fucking burning down. There's no brick facade.
Yeah.
This thing's burning down. When you look at some of the building construction, we can lose structural integrity within 15 minutes of the first ignition,
Wow.
you know. So the
Mm.
chances that a firefighter has to bail out is significantly higher than I would suggest in the UK. But looking at building construction and the way things are going back home, that might be a thing to consider. And
Yeah, with a lot of these wooden
we will,
pop-up buildings. I mean, you'll argue they're impregnated and they've got a lot of sacrificial wood on them and they'll survive. But I don't know if that's going to be the case after they've been up for 15 years.
someone's knocked a few holes in. We have something called balloon construction where you can actually have a void from the basement all the way to the attic. So if the fire starts in the basement, it's through the walls quite quickly. So we
What's
we do a lot
the
of training on building.
economical argument for that? Is that for ventilation and energy efficiency? Why would they have that?
Probably a bit of that, but it's just we have some very old wooden buildings. We
Okay.
have wooden buildings over 100 years old.
Hmm.
And our crews spend a huge amount of time studying building construction. So if we
Hmm.
do get a property on fire and it's it could be laddered. So the order will go to ladder the building. And if you ever look at some of the big aerial trucks, they've usually got 10 or 15 ladders in the back. And ladders will go up to as many windows as possible, and then the
Just
firefighters can
for
actually go
just
up the
for
ladder.
different options for egress.
Purely access and egress. Just gives us the options for access and egress.
It's not
So
bad, yeah.
the way of fighting fires, the NFPA way of fighting fires here compared to the way that we studied, again, that's quite alien. Entry control is an emerging technology here. You think about this, but how ingrained is entry control into the mind of a British firefighter? There's nothing else apart from entry control.
No.
And whilst we have really good accountability tags and we can account for everybody on the fireground, we're now turning our mind to entry control for the searching buildings. So we can, so there's a huge shift. And you find yourself when you go on a fire, especially, you've got to, I usually call it my translator. You've got to translate in your head before you give an order, because it's almost like a different language.
Why are we, why do you, I mean, so the entry control stuff we actually covered it recently. It came from Smithfield Market, 1958 was when they first started using them in the UK. I speak to a lot of international guests and they still don't like it. Because they're still, and I gave a poor example that came from an international fire behaviour instructor a little while ago, and he said, so hang on a minute, so this person's just out there looking at your cylinder contents, and he's like, why can't you just have competent firefighters that manage their own cylinder? Isn't that part of your national guidance, that you manage your, I said, yeah, it is. It's one of your competencies, manage your turnaround time and your cylinder. So why do you need somebody else? He said, your pump operator, do you have someone else stood checking how much water they're using and checking, and no, don't be facetious. We're being silly now. But I kind of understood it as well to an extent. But like, how did you think about that when you went over there? You're like, oh God. Were you like, this feels a bit, you're not getting lots more line of duty deaths in the UK. Is it just that the wearers themselves are more safety conscious? They're just more, I don't want to say professional or better, but it is very foreign to people in the UK, that is.
It is very foreign. And I was asked the question, so why have you got that? And I talked about Smithfield Market because it's ingrained in the first day of your BA course as a recruit, And I find that most legislation, I was advised, is written in blood. So like when you look at the Fire Prevention Act and when you look at everything else, everything evolves due to disasters. But that's not international. And here they've had some disasters, but we see evolving fire code issues coming on over here. Right now, there's a big discussion because there's a battle that the developers want to be able to convert the larger buildings into residential because of the housing crisis, but they only want one means of egress. So the firefighters are now battling against that, saying, well, there should be two because you need one for fire. So there's all of this going on right now, that battle between one challenge and the other.
There's only two places, isn't there? There's UK and somewhere else that doesn't mandate 2 staircases. I forget what the other country is, but it's only the UK and another that don't mandate. And please correct me if someone might be screaming into the radio if I'm getting this wrong. But we don't mandate 2 staircases because, again, the construction industry is so powerful, and they're very aware, as I'm sure you're probably having those conversations now, that you're asking me to give up a lot of space there, Chris, in the fire service and the fire department, brigade, whatever. Any idea how the cost of that rental space over 40 years is massive? Just because you think my building's going to fail. My building's not going to fail, Chris. You're offending me as a construction expert.
Bad things never happen. Have you noticed?
They never happen.
Unless you talk to a firefighter, please, never.
But if it does happen,
so we now
it's not my problem. It's never going to happen. It's the Grenfell analogy. It will never fail. Building won't fail.
Nobody told me this would happen. Find the email where you told me this would happen. We currently have 2, but they want to change the code to make it 1. So in terms of entry control, it's now been mandated. So our health and safety executive have said thou shalt start doing entry control. So we're now working our ways through that. And when I try and talk about the concept of having tallies on your SCBA set and using a board and things like this, I don't know where we'll end up. Well, one thing that I would say, and most of North America is really good at, is accountability, which we don't do a huge amount of in the UK. But whenever we arrive on scene, I'll walk up to a board and Everybody who's on the fire ground is listed. We know exactly who they are, and we know exactly where they are. And
Yeah.
we can call for a tally to be taken, and we can call for a head count to be taken at any time. So that's
So
one
just help
thing
me,
that I
sorry,
found.
is that like a sector style board that just goes on the first arriving
Yeah,
appliance and everyone naturally knows to go to it? Or
everybody goes to it. Everybody puts the tallies on it. So every firefighter's issued with. In fact, I've got one here.
I was going to say, because that's not specifically an SCBA tally, is it? It's just a firefighter's
Oh,
identity tally. Yeah.
so you have
Yeah,
that,
there you go.
and it's
Why
velcroed,
don't we
and the
do
board's
that?
got the
Because we
velcro.
do it in ISAR, and that, the National
Yeah,
Resilience Model that ISAR, we all have that, and whatever sector you're working in, we do that when you leave the boo. But we don't do that in the fire. Why? I've never idea why we don't do that.
and I find that really, and for some of the bigger jobs, we've now got a
It's a good
command unit
idea.
concept, and it's a table. So someone actually sits at the table with the board. In the
Yeah.
wintertime, they blow the snow off it and things like this. And as you arrive, you go to the board and you present your tally, and it goes on, and I make a big point. And the reason why I've got so many of these is because I've left them at fires all over Chatham, Kent. Every couple of days one
I
arrives
was
back.
about to say, which would counter to your point. I'm like, because the problem with sector boards is I wander out and I don't bother going telling Chris that I'm going to sector 3 because he'll just have to rub it off his board. And then when we do have an emergency and everyone goes, how come Chris is in 4 sectors? He's on every single bloody board, because I don't care and I've forgotten and I'm just a blinkered firefighter going somewhere else. But if you do have your own tally, the hope is
Yeah.
I'm not going to leave it, because then I have to tell someone I've lost it, and I'm going to go back and get it. Do you know what I mean? And I
So
think that
the other
would work
interesting
better.
bit, we have the other concept that I struggle with is our dispatchers, our control operators monitor the radio. We don't have fireground comms and then radio back to dispatch. It's
Okay.
all one comms. So everything that you say
Ah.
between the BA men and the IC or the BA firefighters is monitored by a dispatcher. And the dispatcher will sit with the cans on, and if there's an emergency or something, the dispatcher's listening out for that. And then they can hit a mayday or whatever. So the dispatcher can act independently of the incident commander. And that's really, really, it's a difficult job. And I came a cropper with that because I once gave a famous order. When someone asked me what I should do, I said, well, put the fucking fire out. And it got broadcast all over the internet and things like that. Because, it's just, someone asks you the obvious, what do you want to put the fucking fire out? That'll help.
Put the wet stuff on the hot stuff, gang, yeah?
And that was the first fire I went to. Everyone's running around and this thing's burning down. And I'm like, good God, let's just put the fire out, shall we? Which is another debate, because whilst you're setting up all of these systems, who's putting the fire out? Whilst we're setting up sectors and doing all of this and everything else, I always have to make the point, still got to go and put the fire out whilst we're making
Fiddling
everything
while
right.
Rome burns. That's my frustration.
Exactly.
I've seen in a few places in the
Exactly.
UK, we brought in these BA briefing logs. I've seen it in a couple of regional breathing apparatus conversations, because they picked up on something in Nog, and it came out of Grenfell around the recording of the briefings. So what exactly did Chris say or not say in his brief to his firefighters and blah, blah, blah. And they came out with a lot of these sheets, and it just became a paperwork exercise. The why,
Yep.
I understood the why. We want to make sure, because what I say and what you hear could be very different, but we want the actual thing that you did say. I get it, because if you get lost in there, what did he say left? Did he say right? I don't know. But it just becomes a paperwork exercise. And like you say, we end up fiddling while Rome burns. We're just like, yeah, right, okay, get in there and do the goddamn thing. But you made a good point about professionalism on the radios, because I think, and again, my mind's just full of so much stuff half the time, the Americans just use one channel. They have a fireground radio, they use one channel. And we were like, well, that's going to be chaos, absolute chaos. And funnily enough, it's not, because then you end up just calibrating your own language, your own priorities, and you only send stuff over it that's really required. You're not wandering down the street going, Chris, where's the goddamn hydrant, mate? I'm down on the 4th Street. Can you bring another length of hose? You just get it done. You don't start having stupid conversations over a radio because you're aware everyone's listening.
I brought in a few more channels. So we have things, if you have if the tanker operations is working, because 50% of our area don't have hydrants. So we work off a fleet of tankers. And we have these big Porter dams.
Bowsers, yeah.
I tell you something, these we get certificated by the insurance sector to say that we can replicate a hydrant using tankers. They send somebody down every couple of years, and they actually monitor us to make sure that we can maintain a stream of firefighting media equal to a hydrant by using tankers going back and forth. And we get a
Bloody
certificate and it
hell.
reduces everybody's fire insurance. And you watch the boys and girls on tanker ops, and it's just a sight to see. They're literally driving back and forth, dropping tankers, filling tankers, dropping tankers. So I said, let's put all that on a tanker channel. Let's just have a guy
Yeah.
who can run the tanker ops and then run that. And then we'll have
It's
a
a
chiefs
massive
channel
water
where we
relay, isn't it? And that there's a lot
it's
of conversation going on there, yeah. So what are these dams? Are
there's
they
no
9,000 litre dams and they just pop loads up? Or because that must be a hell of an operation if you get a big job.
yeah, it literally comes off the side, it pops up, and then they fill it, they dump it, and then
Yeah.
they put the suction into that, and then they'll make sure that the trucks are coming back and forth, or you might have various ones linked together, and they can create this at the roadside in about 5 minutes. They literally can just
Wow.
drop this, get the tank going. And the one thing we don't do, well, I was about to say we don't do hose laying, but as you know, the back of our pumps carry hundreds of feet of hose because we literally connect to the hydrant, then drive to the fire if we have
I
hydrant
love
supply.
that, you know.
We don't
I
have
think
anything
that's
like
such a
high
better
volume
model.
pumping.
Yeah.
Oh, it took me a while, but you know, I can, again,
You're all Storts
they can,
couplings with lay flat, like you say, flaked ready on the back, aren't you? Is that how a lot of yours are working, isn't it?
yeah, there's no hose reels, there's no high pressure hose reels. So, and the good thing
No.
is, you know, that whenever we're going interior, they're taking flat hose with them, you know, they're taking a decent chunk of water with them when they
Forces them
go
to
in.
run those drills a lot better. Even the like Australians, John McDonough says, you know, they just get so good at hose management, and the firefighters become very resilient, very tactical, because you've got to get better at your positioning, staying low, working the hose through a complex building. Are you guys 45s? Are you? I'm sorry, I'm asking you silly little questions. Feel free to. I know you're not. You're not rolling out
we
hose
have
on
a
the background.
combination. No, we have a combination, and it goes up to 100. We have high volume hose as well. So we have the big hose, we have the smaller hoses, we have the trash lines as well for smaller fires. But you watch a recruit course, because a lot of people in North America, they very few get trained by the department. They show up qualified after spending 2 years at college. And you watch the recruits doing their drills, and it's all hose management. So before even searching, it's all about, even the searching is around hose management, keeping the hose coming, making sure the hose is being fed through and fed through effectively. That's one thing it's impressive to watch, Pete, when you see them down there and they're all low. There's certain ways that they advance, and they, you know, and then there's the whole discussion
we've
about
taken that to be a little bit like unnecessary punishment. The old hose Tuesdays, you know, we've got rid of that in a lot of places in service because people misinterpreted it as an instructor flex. Like, oh, this is just a chance for you to bully people, get rid of the weak ones. And I'm like, no. There was probably some of those instructors. I'm sure there was. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
There's bad people everywhere that just want to massage their egos. But the pendulum swung too far. Merseyside again, I'm going to keep blowing smoke up their ass. They still do a lot of it, but they've got really good training centre and facility. I've not had a chance to go to the new one yet, actually. National Resilience have thrown like another 40 million in it or something, haven't they? It looks bloody good.
They
It's a
opened it a
very,
couple of
very
weeks
nice
ago.
place. Yeah, I thought it did. So talk to me about what things were like when you first joined. Compare it to what it was like when you left for recruits, and help us maybe pick some of the good elements that you wish we'd have kept, good elements we have kept, and what you've seen over the pond and around your travels.
The one thing I would say, because there's the age-old debate, is that the fire service, it is a paramilitary organisation without question. The fact that you were stripes or epaulets or whatever, the fact that there is an order. And when you talked before about how you can show more empathy to your team, there's got to be two sides to your personality. Well, actually, no, that's not quite true. There's got to be two edges to your personality. The way you are when you're sat in the office and the way you are when you're fighting a fire. But you've still got to have elements of both. And those, for me, were always the best bosses I had. Is the one where they very rarely they might not have changed the personality. They might just have changed the level of the voice when they were fighting a fire. So I think you talk about hose running and things like that. We went through that period, didn't we, at the end of the 90s, where we stopped being brigades and became services, and we started being a lot more.
We did the rank to roll thing, and
rank to roll. I mean, like a group manager. It sounds like you run a supermarket. You know, I find that I get why we did that. I get the change to a more preventative function for the fire department. I get that.
Yes,
I get that.
Yep.
But you don't have to lose your identity. And I think we lost a lot of identity then. We lost a lot of lost a lot of heart to the job. So the new people coming in were very much finding their own way because, call the instructor by the first names. But the people who
Mm.
were already in were completely not recognizing what was going on. And that transition of change was just too quick. And too many people made careers out of driving that change. There was too many vanguards who came in and, we're going to completely throw everything out. We're going to
Yeah.
change it. And it was nonsense. It was real nonsense.
Yeah.
So,
Some
and
people were
again, I
just
go
trying to
back
score
to,
points, which frustrated me
yeah,
because like some of it was worth it, and they were trying to get rid of the bullies, and I want to get rid of the bullies. No, they're horrible people. But then it just got a little bit silly, and confusing was a good word you used there. It got confusing for knuckle dragging firefighters like me. I'm just like, can't we just do the job well? I'm not trying to be loud or intimidating, but when we're out there doing the thing, this is what you said about like having different, and I agree with you. It's not false. You're not two-faced, but I always talk about the switch. Like when we're out there,
mhm,
it's command and control. Sounds very official, doesn't it?
yeah,
But I need to create a bubble of safety on the incident ground, and you're going to be one of my walking, talking props in this play that we're doing out there. And I need you to be in alignment with my tactical plan. Otherwise, as a team, we're going to fail. And there's a sense of urgency to this. We're trying to hit a moving target. So I am going to be a bit more assertive. I might point at you. I'm going to raise my voice because it's loud and there's an incident going on and everything's going on. And I want you to do it with a sense of purpose and intention. But some people wrongly take that into the office. I absolutely agree. And then when I'm on the office, I'm like, everything is discussion. Everything is, it's a democracy, ideas and stuff like that. I'll take responsibility and I'll probably likely still make the end decision, but I want all your ideas. And I do want your ideas on the incident ground, but I only want ideas and challenge to an extent. Because there is many ways to put this fire out and lots of them will probably work. But we just need one, and this is the one we're going to do today.
There's many ways to do it, but in the end, we're going to do it your way. That's the way that it works.
That's just the way it is, because I'm wearing the hat today. And then tomorrow we'll talk about it and I'll learn and we could have done it differently. But yeah, don't start self-deploying in your own silly ideas because all of them are right, but collectively we'll fail. We need to be in a system of command and control when we're doing the thing.
I think the secret to what you're explaining there is prior to that, it's all about training so that people have got the confidence to follow the order. And then afterwards, one of the biggest lessons I learned was that humility that, you know what, I may have got that wrong. If you can stand in front of your crew and say, I made a mistake there, and be able to admit you've made a mistake and bring them into that process, that will do far more for your command leadership style and for your integrity and for people's trust in you than anything else. There's nothing worse than someone who makes a mistake and then tries to cover it up. And I actually relish in going down to stations and going, I might have made a mistake though. When I first got it, I made loads of them. I mean, I literally made loads of them. And I remember sitting with one platoon going, I might have really fucked that up. I appreciate you looking after me there.
Yeah.
No, Chief, listen, you come from another place, you're learning as you go. And we sat there and we had one of the most heartfelt conversations. And I found that experience, we talk about empathy in leadership. It's the huge thing, emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that brought it home to me is I came to a completely new country without my family for the first 2 months. I was living here alone. And I was a complete outsider in a new job with a new language because no one could understand a word I was saying. And I had to be empathetic. I had to have empathy because these were the only people who were going to help me through this. I had to bond with the firefighters. And I recall again, but I don't know if you realize it, a bit of a Dan Stevens thing. Just make it all about the job. We're just going to talk about fires. We're just going to talk about fire and rescue. So one of the things that I found when I became chief, and I was here for 3 years before I became chief. I was an assistant chief and a deputy chief. And this was called Fire and Emergency Services. So it was Chatham Kent Fire and Emergency Services because it had emergency management and because it had the paramedics. Complete confusion. What's fire and an emergency service? So I was asked when I became chief, what's the first thing you're going to do? I'm going to change the name to Fire and Rescue. And I was asked, is that because that's what Merseyside's called? I said, no, because that's what we do. So I can look at someone in the eye. We don't have a mission statement. We don't have all this other rubbish that people write on walls. We go and put fires out. Let's just be clear, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to put the gear on. We're going to go out there. We're going to put the fire out. And we're going to do it, hopefully, without killing ourselves or anybody else. That's the aim. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk.
Quick pause, because I want to tell you about a new partnership we have with First Tactical. First Tactical builds equipment for people who work when environments are seriously unforgiving. And if you go to their website, you'll find kit is designed specifically for us, for firefighters, for police officers, technical rescue teams, fire investigation, hazmat, hazardous materials teams, urban search and rescue. This is honestly the equipment that you really want to rely on. It's built for real operations, real pressure, long ass days, and I genuinely use this stuff. Here's a few of my favorites. They've got their men's Defender short sleeve. I've got that in black. It's got a huge load of specialized pockets, space for all of our gears, the pads, the pens, all of the stuff. It's got them on the sleeves on both sides. Also got the Defender pants. These have got 28 pockets in total on them. It's mad. Let's be honest, we absolutely love the bags. I use their 25-litre specialist half-day backpack. The shoulder straps as well are strong AF. Like I say, this isn't lifestyle gear. It's built for real world, real operations. We talk about the realities of the job, and First Tactical is just the ideal partnership for us. So go take a look, firsttactical.co.uk. Now back to the show.
That element that you say about emotional intelligence, how can people develop that? I think one of the best personal development tools I've ever had was actually my children. But I don't think that's something you could prescribe as part of a mentoring plan to say, oh, have yourself some kids, because it really increases your self-awareness about how you're coming across. You spoke a lot around leadership. Do you think people are born with it? Do you think you can develop it? Because there's a very subtle difference between obvious and oblivious, isn't there? And some people in leadership positions, you think to yourself, you've got to realize how you come across, mate. You must know this. And maybe you do know and you don't care. And that's okay. It will be a limiting factor in your career. But for some people, they feel like the tools aren't out there. They go on a management goal. And this is one of the things that frustrates me as well. A lot of the good man in the mirror or person in the mirror, the senior leadership, the executive leadership programs, you only get them when you move into those upper echelons. I mean, what development did you have through your career as an earlier commander, manager, and then when you started hitting that sweet spot, when you're coming into senior leadership roles, where you probably benefited from a lot of great development? But I wonder if people are getting it too late in their career. Like, you can do so much damage for the first 15, 20 years if you've not had this development. And you do a lot of that now with mentoring people, but I don't know how much of that's really happening. And I think it's needed more now than ever, given selfishly in the UK, we're just hemorrhaging experience. We're losing some people are jumping ranks so fast.
Yeah. I think having the diverse career that I had and watching how other people worked, I can recall 2 or 3 people who really impacted me in terms of how to be a leader and how to lead. And only one of those people was a firefighter. The other one was a police officer, and the other one was a major in the army. To watch how to listen to the chap from the army tell me how he commanded a regiment in Belfast of bomb disposal officers. I mean, you're talking there about a militaristic approach, but it's an emergency response. So to listen to the way that they did that was just fascinating. And I recall watching a police officer run a gold command during the 7th of July bombings in 2005. This guy was he was a walking legend. But in every single case, they showed genuine concern for their people. And I think a lot of it is down to, there's a lot of personality involved. And I think a lot of it's down to confidence. And again, the confidence to admit you've made a mistake, the confidence to show yourself as a human being, not just a set of rank markings. Because and also you've got to understand that you have a covenant, no matter if you agree with it or not. There is a covenant between you and your firefighters that you will always protect them. And there's been a number of occasions I can think of where I've put myself in political harm's way to try and ensure the well-being of firefighters. And some people have said that's grandstanding, and some people have said you're doing that for sure. No, because once or twice I could have lost my job. So it's really about not just talking the talk, but actually people seeing you do it. And again, be out in the fireground, turning up to the most benign of incidents where the chief rolls up, puts his gear on, and then appears on scene. How's it going? Does anybody need anything? Can I help you?
There's a bit of mentoring.
Just talking to them.
I'm not here to take over, folks. Present. No, just what's she thinking? What's your thoughts? What have we got? What's your ideas?
Exactly.
And then, you do you want to take over, Gaffer? No, I don't. No, I think you're doing a great job. No. Just interested, Beat sitting at headquarters, shuffling paperwork. Want to come out here and see what you guys are doing.
Absolutely. And any excuse, there's nothing I love better than leaving a meeting to go to a fire. I make a habit of it. If a meeting's longer than an hour, with finance or whatever, you know what, if there's a medical call, I might go and run that.
Yeah.
You know, they always say there's only one person in the fire department who can go to any call they want. That's the chief officer. So
Yeah.
I
I love
think you make a really good point. I think what people have got to do is to develop that, they've got to talk to the family. They've got to talk to people that know them, because it's not something you can be taught. It's not something you can put on. It's something that's a personal. You've got to do this yourself. And there are times when a line's crossed and you lose your temper, and you know you've got to deal with someone. And afterwards, I've even said I always finish by saying, "Listen, just for my own well-being, have I been fair with you?" Even when I've thrown people under discipline, have I been fair with you? Because that means something to me. Now's your point to come back at me. Have I treated you fairly? And
Yeah. It's a very
I try and
unfortunate thing
teach
that's
that.
happened, but there's no need for me to, when we're having the disciplinary meeting and when we're doing whatever, I don't need to keep beating you over the head with it. You know what you've done. We both regret what you've done. You're forcing me to be a manager, which I don't want to be, but I will be when I need to be. But you think to yourself, look, we are where we are. Let's let it run its course. I've been part of a few of these now. I had one against me, actually. I was under investigation for quite a period of time. Not for anything. I didn't steal anything or hit anyone or anything like that. I upset somebody, unfortunately. And I felt horrible.
Happens.
I felt really horrible. I felt like a fraud. I felt like a bad person. I thought, do my kids feel this way? Do I upset them? Because I am a bit intense. Say again, sorry.
You feel like a fraud to yourself. You feel like you've let yourself down.
Yeah. I don't want anyone coming to work, and I always thought of myself as an energy multiplier, as, you know, someone that so I would like to be one of the reasons you like coming to work, because I'm excited and I love the job and I want us to win as a team. And the idea of someone coming to work and they'd had an interaction with me and gone home feeling worse, I genuinely got very upset about that. Made me very upset, like tearful a few times when I read the thing that they'd written about the way that I'd spoken to them, and I felt horrible about it. And it was a real, like, sorry to go into this personal rabbit hole, but it was I felt like a fraud. I felt like a hypocrite, and I just felt ashamed of myself. And it all passed over, and I obviously didn't lose my job, and it just got dealt with.
Yeah, but not to get into the details. The investigating officer, if they've got that, again, if they've got those social skills, should recognise that degree of remorse.
They were very good. Yeah, I was treated very well.
And if you've got that degree of remorse, what is the point of a punitive discipline?
Yeah.
But there again, if something happens where someone's overtly, and you don't do the discipline, it's got the other side. So that has been for me how I've dealt with it, is by always having that personal side, which causes more trouble than it can fix some days. But it is what it is.
We've spoken a few times here about the EMS element that you guys and girls do over there. You know a lot more about the UK than I do. Still a very emotive subject. You know, that sort of ops response going into medical calls. The few services that do it. I think Cornwall have done it for 15 years. Is it Cornwall? Can't remember. There's a lady running it.
Cornwall
I apologise.
Cornwall had the three. They had like a police, fire, and EMS responder all in one, if I remember.
Yeah, they do.
Rightly,
for Catherine Billing, I think it is. We had her on the podcast. Kath Billing, I think it is. She's the chief there now. They've been doing it for a very, very long time. A lot of the services don't like it. They think it's not our job. I think off the back of our own success, and you'll know this better than me with all the prevention work and everything like that, there's less fires than there ever has been. Yep. Doesn't mean we still shouldn't be excellent at it and do a lot of drilling. But we're going to have some more stuff pushed into our bucket to make us busier. And we see that all the time. I would much prefer to be going to emergencies, medical calls, than go in and fit in a stair lift for Mrs. Goggins. My personal opinion, other people don't have to share that, and I'm not speaking on your behalf, but I would love to try and sell it to me. Because I'm already sold, but because I want us to do it. I do a lot of work with my brother-in-law. He's a paramedic. I go on shadow shifts with him. A lot of people don't like it. Obviously out there, I'm guessing they must like it, or is it just forced upon them? Help me give both sides of the argument.
Well, let me give you the negatives first.
Okay.
So you've got a 20-ton fire truck, lights and sirens, go into a medical call. So every time we put those lights and sirens on, there's an element of risk. So we've got to consider that there's a risk. what we do here is we have an EMS service that's run by a third party. So I don't run EMS. I manage the contract is the way that it's put. And quite a lot of the paramedics are also firefighters, either retained or some of the full-time. So we set the level of service. Our council sets the level of service that fire will do. So council could technically say to me, no more going into house fires. We're just going to stand outside and fight it from the yard. Our hazmat response comes from another department because we don't have our own hazmat. But when it comes to medical call, we have something called a tiered medical agreement. So that's a set of criteria in which fire will be tiered, is the word that they use. So the call comes into the 911 centre. It then gets sent to a provincial EMS dispatcher. And if it reaches that criteria, they'll tip fire out at the same time they'll tip an ambulance out. And that's usually life critical stuff. Someone's not breathing, VSAs, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather have, and I've been there, you've probably been there yourself, Pete, when you're down by someone's side pumping the chest, you don't care what uniform comes through the door. You really don't care. And we've got police that show up as well. As long as you've got someone who turns up and goes, I'm here to help.
And the irony is we do it anyway. We already do it. If you get to an RTC
you're driving down the road, which
almost always happens, you're going to be doing it anyway.
If you're driving down the road and you see someone keel over, pump stops, everyone jumps out and starts doing first aid. That's what we do. So I look at it two ways. One, it keeps you relevant with the community. It's the fact that fire and rescue, that's what we do. Secondly, as you say, it keeps people busy. Now, the flip side of that is in some parts, especially in the United States, I've still got a lot of friends and colleagues in Nevada. They run more medical calls than they do fire calls. But there again, the EMS is part of the fire department. They've got a red ambulance. It's like Chicago Fire. So for me, I think it would be short-sighted of anyone to turn down the opportunity to go out and serve the community and be seen.
Because we're going to get some money for it as well. Not that should matter, but it will matter to the senior leaders because they're like, and I think this is where the unions, and I'll say this, not you, but the unions of lots of kinds, not just a specific union, good intentions. They want us to make sure we get rewarded for it. It is an additional skill set we're taking on. But I feel like they're getting bloody in the way a lot. I feel like we get stuck in this quagmire of political mess. And a lot of firefighters, I would argue, would like to do it. And I think we would get some money from the UK model being the NHS. Do you think it's ever going to happen? Ever's a long time.
I think it will. Because as I'm seeing here with paramedics, whilst fires may be going down, and let's just say they are, they're not here, but let's say they're going down, EMS calls are certainly not going down. And when you start talking about supply and demand and resourcing that supply, you're going to end up doing it. The secret is the balance between what you go to and what you don't go to. Okay. And I've seen some departments over here in Canada will go to everything. So I've heard of one story of a fire truck overtaking an ambulance, which is going non-lights and sirens because it's a non-critical call. And then the fire truck rolls up at the door and it's another 10 minutes till the ambulance catches them up. These things do happen in some places. Police officers who are throwing naloxone around and things like this, we're dealing with a lot of opioids. It's all about balance. It's all about saying, can we justify taking that fire pump off the run for fires to go and do something else? So you've got to be careful. If you do too many medical calls, well, why shouldn't that just be a pickup truck with two firefighters in it with some, do you remember the old...
Yeah, like the tactical response vehicles that we have in the UK. Yeah, just doing red one calls, just cardiac arrests or whatever.
And if they were in a city, they could probably spend the entire day going from door to door to door, just providing resource and then waiting for a patient transfer to come. Mm-hmm. There's some departments in America. If you look at some departments in America, they've actually got fire engines with patient carrying abilities. So you've got a fire pump with a bit of equipment, and in the back, it's an ambulance bay. So the fire truck can roll up, put the fire out, get the person, put them in and drive them to the ambulance. These are all things that are floating around right now. If you go to Miami, they have a lot of tactical response because they've got a lot of older people. Yeah. We're finding here that a lot of people over the past 5 years have sold houses in Toronto for millions of dollars and then retired to Chatham, Kent, because it's got 2 lakes and we've got, it's very rural, it's very nice. But again, they're going to the hospital a lot. We're finding that our paramedics are also in the hospitals now dealing with offload delays. We've got a lot of community paramedics.
That's the downside with if you do transport, like, again, when I work with my brother-in-law, is you do a fun bit for 20 minutes and then you're waiting to offload them for 4 hours. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
And
The hospitals
I get
are
involved
just clogged. They're broken.
and it's the same here. People struggle to get a doctor, and I see the same issues with the health service here that we have with the NHS. And offload delays is something I do get involved in. So what did we do? Because we're quite local and quite small, we can go across, and we've got some exceptionally talented managers in paramedic services who basically said, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll get 2 paramedics in the hospital and they'll set up a ward. So effectively the ambulance is the doors to the hospital. They'll set up a little ward, and we can release the ambulance, because it's all about releasing the ambulance back. Otherwise, we've got no ambulance.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the winter time, we've got paramedics who are helping doctors treat minor injuries. And we do have a huge amount of community paramedics. So these are paramedics who go out and deal with people in their homes. And we try and align that with community fire safety and some of the prevention work we're doing. So there's a few things we brought from the UK. But yeah, to answer your question, Pete, absolutely. I would never say no to anything. If I've got the choice to anything, at least give it a dose of thinking about before you refuse to help the community.
Yeah. No is the easy answer, isn't it? I think people just gravitate to no sometimes. I wanted to ask you.
When you said that's not our job.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not our job. It's often
That's the thing that drives me insane. That's not our job. Oh.
I'd
like to meet a firefighter, define their job. Have you ever met a firefighter who, after 35 years, could you define what your job was? Firefighter, social worker, paramedic, mechanic, plumber, electrician. Define your job.
Yeah. We're the master of all, jack of all trades, master of none. I wanted to ask you around, as you move through different stages of your career, this is something that I'm struggling with a little bit personally here. So a bit of a private coaching session we'll do here live. And someone termed it productivity debt to me recently. And it's this analogy of waking up every morning and feeling like you owe the world something. And you've got that vague sense that you're slowly falling behind in some kind of intangible, arbitrary life metric, because your world just grows. You've got more and more to do. As you get into senior leadership roles, and the weight of responsibility must be suffocating if you're not able to shift a mindset to truly understand what is within your sphere of influence, your sphere of control. How have you dealt with that? Because otherwise you just end up working all of the time. And someone said to me a long time ago, the only people that will remember that you went in on the weekends and that you worked late are your children. No one else will care. No one is going to clap Chris when he finishes his 50-year career and thank him for the Fridays and the late nights and the whats and the whats and the whats. Because the fire and rescue service is a black hole. You can't fill it. It will swallow every bit of energy you give it.
I went through that when I moved here, because someone kindly, they thought they were kind enough to advise, you are the only fire chief the province has ever nominated to be a citizen of Canada. So you feel, Jesus, I owe a debt. And when I became the chief, suddenly, I feel for people who, especially some of the big metropolitan chiefs, you're either going, what are you going to do? You're going to leave it the same, you're going to fix it, you're going to change it. Well, I knew there was a ton of stuff and I'll be equally personal back in from experience. So I was running 50-hour weeks and running calls 7 days a week, and, doing all that thing you do to try and embed yourself as the chief. And then we had an incident, which is still going on today. June of 2021, we had an abandoned gas well, and there's thousands of these things around southwest Ontario. This is where people just used to dig holes in their backyards, and they could pump gas from the layers beneath the earth. And these were all dug in the 1870s, and then they were plugged, and now they're slowly beginning to leak hydrogen sulfide and methane and all sorts of stuff. And we had this call to an odor, which we get odor investigations every day, and it was found to be an abandoned gas well. A long story short is that we evacuated half of a town 3 times, and on the 3rd time it exploded and injured a lot of people, nearly killed a couple of firefighters. And I took it very, very personally. We're still subject to a lawsuit about it. To this day,
we won't go into too much depth about it, but yeah.
No. We stayed on scene 24 hours a day for 18 months. One of the longest running incidents I've ever heard of. So we had a fire truck parked there for 18 months. We've still got hazardous materials technicians living on site to try and, and we've got the steam stable. And now we've bought the land and we're going to go looking for the fire truck. We're going to go looking for the gas well. To get back to your point, That was the point when I realized that if I didn't do something myself, I was going to end up killing myself. The amount of hours, the amount of stress, I took that all very, very personally. So I had a bit of a moment, Pete, and I realized that the biggest debt you owe is to yourself. So this productivity thing where you've got to do more. But you've got to do, firstly, what's expected of you by the community. That's the first thing. And secondly, you've got to look after yourself. And I've come
You
out the other
can't pour
side
from
of
an
that
empty
with
cup.
exactly. And I found my health was, for the first time in my life, my health was diminishing. I was struggling, I was constantly tired. So the ability to delegate, the ability to have faith in the people who work for you, who work with you, the ability to say to yourself honestly, the same way you say to anybody else, that's enough. And that's my advice to anybody in that position. You've got to understand that it's your duty as an efficient officer to be able to analyze your own capacity as you can for anything else.
It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighters podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. But here's the honest truth. It takes a colossal amount of time and work to keep the podcast going. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. Now, if you've ever wanted to meet a member of the podcast, buy us a beer, buy us a coffee, and you think anything you've ever listened to on the podcast has been worth £3, that's basically what we're asking you for. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behavior, firefighter health, cancer risks, incident debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes. I heard it said by Dr. Ranjan Chatterjee. He runs a podcast in the UK, and he was talking to a doctor, and this gentleman was in his 60s. He retired from being a doctor from the NHS, and he said, I work too much. He says, I always work too much. And he realized that he had a real mindset shift where he said, he used to think, and this is very relevant, I think, for firefighters as well. I used to think that my patients needed me. Like, they needed that, like Chris and his partner, their baby's going to be due in a month. I need to be available. I need to be on call. They need me. And he says, they don't need me. They need a doctor. It doesn't need to be me. The big secret was, and it rang true when you were saying it there about the move over there, that you owe something. It's like, they don't need you. The unfortunate reality is you need them, because this thing you do gives you a tremendous sense of purpose, of pride, of identity. Because if Chris exploded tomorrow, guess what? They'd be absolutely fine. Someone would immediately replace you. They'll get another one. Doesn't mean because they hate you, doesn't mean they're malicious and they're uncaring, not the you're just a number thing, but I'm not here to save the fire and rescue service. Yeah, okay, I'm trying to do a podcast, trying to share some great knowledge. It was here long before me, it'll be here long after. I'm not here to save anything, and I'm not here to fix the world. Do you know what I mean? But it is very difficult because what we do is such a big identity thing, isn't it, for us? And you've got to remember that you're more than just the thing you do.
I couldn't agree more. And as you move towards retirement, and I'm thinking I'm going to retire in 6 years. That's my plan. I'm going to retire in 6 years, and I'll have done nearly 40 years when I retire. That's my plan. Wow. But I quite often go and have a pint with an old friend of mine who's a retired chief, and exactly what you just said. You're there serving a need. The need isn't there because of you. You need it more than it does. And if you don't get that out of your mind, the day you retire, what's your point? You're no longer, and that's what we talked about at the very start. You put that uniform on, you become something bigger. So does that mean when you take the uniform off, you become something less? So you've got to find that over that time, you've got to find that way of addressing your own personal needs and your own personal self-actualization, so that when you can no longer do the job effectively and you're not stealing money and putting people at risk, once you reach that point, everyone can part as friends.
Yeah. It is such a difficult thing to shift, because especially when you're trying to achieve change and you try so hard to embed some of these changes because you believe it's for the better and the things that you've learned, but it can destroy you, because you can't it's like you said earlier, but trying to heat up the bath. It's like trying to heat up the ocean. You know, if you arrive in a new team, or you arrive in a new service, and you're trying to change something, it's like trying to heat up the ocean. It can be a thankless task. But also, someone said to me, like, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Like, if you say that the fire and rescue service is struggling at the minute because of cultural challenges, that's my fault. Well, it's not your fault. Might be part of your responsibility to try and change it, but you can kill yourself trying to change other people. Do you know what I mean? You really can. Which is what probably brings me on to that element of authenticity, which is something that's come across a lot for me in our conversations and looking at your history, because you walk the walk, you don't just talk the talk, you practice what you preach. And when I was reading and preparing for our conversation today, and because you've been at times today fast and loose with some of your examples and your terminology and your language and stuff like this, but I think that screams more to that authentic leadership role, because I always think that whole rank to role thing, managers enforce rules, but leaders enforce values. And that's what I've seen and heard through our conversation. But I struggle to articulate beyond that statement. Like, help me communicate that in a way where, like you said, there's a lot of grey in a lot of the things that we do. Very few things are black and white, and they should remain that way. And, people's behaviour at work can be black and white, right, wrong. But how have you managed to do that and the relationships that you've developed, whereas it is not all about the rules? Leadership is about values.
You've got to be able to take a risk. You've got to be able to be authentic and accept the fact that sometimes you are going to make a mistake, not in just what you do, but in sometimes the things that you say. You need to have that relationship with the people you work with. And listen, if I upset you in any way, I will hold my hand up, So I always find that being authentic is a double-edged sword. A number of times where I have conversations and I take people into confidence about things, and the expectation is it's not going to go elsewhere. And I find it very rarely does. If I say, let me give you a bit of myself, let me tell you some of the things that's going on in my head. And if other people knew this, then it could cause me trouble. But I'm interested to hear what you think. You bring somebody into that. So I find through, exactly, being able to, and again, I'm sorry, I fucked that up. My apologies. I can't apologize enough. And to
my
genuinely
intentions were good, but I stepped on your foot there. I went left and you went right, and we accidentally butted heads. That wasn't malicious.
We're both learning from this. You know what I mean? And accept the fact that at some point you're going to make an enemy by virtue of who you are and what you do. You can't change that.
Yeah.
You can't get through life by making change.
Despite what you want to do, you're going to have to make some very unpopular decisions as chief officer. Very unpopular. Even if it's not something you want to do, that's your job.
I remember being the deputy here, and the chief of the day, still a very dear friend, who mentored me, and he was the guy who brought me to Canada, and he's, we still have the odd pint, and he's still the person I go and talk to. He's the confidant. And I remember him saying, you're going to struggle in this job because you can't be nice to everybody. And it was that whole repaying a debt, and in that mindset that I've come to Canada and people have been good to me and I'm going to be good to them. So it's not the fact that I became the chief and suddenly turned into a complete bastard. It's not like that at all.
No, yeah.
But your allegiance has got to go to the role and to the community. So I always say that fire chief's number one responsibility is the safety of his or her staff. Yeah. And 0.1% next to that is the safety of the community. But you've always got to put your staff first. Everybody else, when you're out doing your job, you put the community first. I think that a senior officer's job is to look after the people who are looking after the community. And if you can balance them things in your head, and if you can make sure people know that you're operating with integrity and with the best of intentions, then that's all you can do. And at the end of the day, one thing for me, what you said before, is what I've just been through, is when you take your holidays, turn your phone off. I remember the first time I took my phone off. We went away on holiday. It was the first time I took a holiday in 8 years. And I turned my phone off and I had grief. I felt like I was just lost. I didn't know. Yeah. What happens if something's happening? What happens if there's a tornado? What happens if something happens? Have a margarita. It's like...
Yeah, because also the hidden cost is your family, isn't it? It's your missus and your children. You've got in fact, take me there, because your children have gone into the sector. both taking on slightly different
Oh, yeah.
roles. That's surreal from someone you've had a lot of experiences, and I imagine the majority have been fairly positive, but I think it's becoming rarer. I don't think my kids will go into the fire service.
It's the strangest thing, Pete, really is. When we arrived here, and I have a lot of my poor wife, Michelle, she left her career and she came over here. And it was, to be fair, it's been good for the kids, really good for everybody, so especially good for the kids. The oldest was 16 and the youngest was, I think, 6 or 7. So right now, when we sit and we still have dinner most weekends together when the kids are all home. So my wife sits at one end of the table with Charlotte, who's an artist. She's 15 and she does a lot of arts. There's Isabel, who's studying drama and theatre studies and everything else. That's the pink and fluffy end of the table. And then I sit with the firefighter and the dispatcher, and this contrast. So Sam decided I was told that Sam wanted to be a firefighter by Sean McRoberts, the chief of training. He came to me and he said, I've got a resume here for somebody who wants to join the job. And I'm like, oh, another idiot. Which fool has decided to follow this path? What do you do, And he told me. And I was I was absolutely floored because he'd never shown any interest, really. And then 2 years later, I got a phone call from the police chief who said, I've got an application here for a dispatcher. And he told me who it was. So Abigail is now a 911. So she answers 911 calls. She does fire dispatching. She does police dispatching. A job that I would never want my kids to go into. And I've said that to her.
That's a very hard job, Very high performing individuals with a big, heavy cognitive load. And they're not able to connect the dots as easily because they don't see the boots on the ground. They don't see the outcome of the incidents. I think the mental traumas they can go through are worse.
So she's really, really good at it. I'll say one thing. She's got that bleak sense of humour that seems to get people through, if you know what I mean.
Good girl.
And then Sam he's retained down in Tilbury. He's at one of our busier stations. And the interesting journey for Sam has been being a recruit firefighter, despite his dad being the chief. He really has had to forge his own path and be everything that he's not the chief's son.
Living in your shadow a little bit, that is.
And it's, from what I hear, he's done more than enough. He's put himself out there. He's put himself forward. And we train our firefighters. They have to come to weekends and nights. So most people come in the fire service over here. They do 2 years in college. They pay their way through college, 2 years of firefighter school and paramedic school. And then they get the ticket and they can apply to be a firefighter. Because we've got so many firefighters, we run our own academy. And they have to come every weekend and nights. And they do it in their own time and that type of thing. And he went through the academy. He's also becoming a millwright. But
isn't that crazy when you compare that to what's like in the UK? We roll out the red carpet and give people all this training, and some of them still bloody quit. If you had to pay for it yourself, and you're still not guaranteed to get it, it's crazy.
No. And once you've got your ticket, you're just like, I'm an electrician. I need to, it's a trade. Everybody's got a trade,
Yeah.
And I pause because it's hard to look at the way that he. The funny thing is, Sam tries to talk to me about firefighting, and I can't talk about North American firefighting. I've never done it. I can't talk about cross layers, and I can't talk about the way that they command. I can't talk about very much about the tactics because I've seen it done and I've read about it, but I never actually did it. I fight fires like you fight fires, rolling out holes and entry control. But incident command I can talk about. So we muddle our way through, And the only thing I can tell you is he came to me a couple of months ago and he went, I was talking to a guy who doesn't like you very much. Well,
good. Okay.
And I said, well, there's a few of them out there, Sam, And he said one thing. He said, I don't like him. I don't agree with him, but he looks after the firefighters. Oh, I'll have that. I'll take that. And you talk about what it is.
Stuff that I do. I'm like, some people love it. Some people hate it. It's okay. It's not the me show. I wish someone else was doing it better than I do it because I'm okay at it, but there's a lot more knowledgeable people. If Chris ran a podcast, it'd be a lot better because there'd be a lot more interesting people. A lot more people at senior leadership roles. You've got a lot more experience than I have, but sometimes you've got to go with what you got. Do you know what I mean? You're doing the best of intentions and you're still going to get some stuff wrong.
Absolutely. If people didn't get things wrong, we'd never leave the station.
No.
That's the fact of life. Our business is mistakes. That's what we deal with. Either someone's made a malicious mistake or someone's made an innocent mistake. But there's a mistake being made somewhere, and we've got to go and correct it. And the thing that you got though, Pete, when you look at your podcast, the diversity of opinions you've got on there is something you said when we were just talking about it becoming a resource. And that's exactly what I've been using for. Take a look at this, because it's not just a British centric, and I'm not blowing sunshine up your ass. I'm just saying it's something
It's
where
hard.
people
I
can go
really
to.
try always to try and zoom out and not get stuck in my own echo chamber, because there are parts of the job that I love more than other parts of the job. But I'm like, it's not about me. And sometimes you take a punt and it lands flat. There's a fascinating academic that's done a study on X, but it just doesn't land, or they can't articulate it very much, or they're not, they're not a great communicator. But I always call it learning out loud, the podcast. I'm like, I'm just going to fumble my way through this, and yes, total transparency. Chris and I have had some communications, and I've got a bit of a document up, and I do know a lot about him already. But I'm going to get lots of stuff wrong during this conversation, and everyone's going to hear it wrong because I'm not going to edit it all because it wouldn't sound like an authentic conversation. But it's exactly what you've just been saying, brother. That element of vulnerability and authenticity, neither of us are here to go, come bow before me whilst I tell you everything I know because I'm the god of fire. No, you've been so open and transparent with some of your mistakes, with some of your setbacks, with some of your learnings. If we could just do more of that, that's what I cry when I hear some senior leaders speak. And I'm like, that's so corporate, folks. You don't even understand that. This self-censorship, it's like trapping ourselves in a golden cage. It's professionalism, this prison that people have begging to get inside, and they've locked it from the inside. And I'm like, and then they're worrying why people don't listen to them, or they don't recognize themselves anymore. But then we see people like you, and I'm like, of course we're blowing smoke up each other's asses, but loads of all the guests we've had on, we don't have guests on that aren't that way, to be honest. They don't get sacked. I said to you before we started, don't let anybody commit professional suicide, and people love it, and they go, bloody hell, Chris was great. He was a bit fast and loose, and I love what you said about this and say about that. I tell you what, bit of a salt of the earth kind of guy, and I'm like, yeah, Chris is great, and he's not special. Like most leaders are like that, but they get in their own way.
The prison cell of arrogance is what I talk about. Is where you, like you say, you climb into arrogance, and it's either because you're too stupid to realise what your shortcomings are, or you don't care what your shortcomings are.
Yeah.
But it's very much about the most confident person is the person who knows their faults, not the people who know what they talk about. And I spend days desperately trying not to say, well, in the UK we did this, because I realised it's not relevant. Not relevant. I could talk about all the things that we had in Merseyside, the joint operations teams, the search and rescue team. We had this, we had that, we had this. Might as well have been a film, because can't do it here. There's some things you just cannot do, and you can't nip water, so there's no point trying. Take what you've got, get a bit of humility, and do it the way that you can do best.
You can't knit water. What a great statement. I'm going to steal that one. I love that. I want to be respectful of your time, brother. I know we've run over a little bit, but I've absolutely loved our conversation. I don't want to cut us off. If there's anything you want us to circle back to, anything we just want to expand on, or something perhaps, some closing thoughts that you want to leave the listeners with, anything we've missed. I don't want to cut us short, but I want to be respectful of your time.
No, what I really like is the way you came about the fact that you can have a non-typical career. It is possible, no matter what your recruit instructor tells you, and what your station manager tells you, and what everybody else tells you. You can, in my career, I've not only fought fires, I've looked after the Royal Armouries, I was a magistrate, I've blew shit up for a living, I did all of these wonderful things, and everybody told me it couldn't be done. And that's not me saying I overcome.
Yeah.
It is possible. You can come and fight fires in another country. It is possible. You can come and do that. If you want to do something, nothing can stop you. That sounds really cheesy, because a lot of people will try and stop you from a good place.
I'm being a bit of a coward. I'll be totally honest with you. I want to do it, but the relationship I have with the senior leadership team where I work, and I never say where I work on the podcast out of respect for them, because these are my thoughts and opinions and my language. It's not theirs. They're very good to me, and they protect me a little bit. They trust me, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm probably a little bit scared and cowardice that if I were to go somewhere else, someone might hit me with a big stick. But I probably need to get over that at some point, because I've created some barriers and boundaries for myself that are going to limit me and also going to limit the purpose of what this thing is. What the purpose of the podcast is more important than me. It's the whole needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. I really want this to be a legacy resource, and I need to put my big boy pants on and get out of my bubble at some point in time. And when I hear people like you, I'm like, his challenges weren't easier than mine. I'm probably just being a bit of a coward.
I'm always reminded, I always bore recruits with the words of Almir Firebrace. And Firebrace was the fire chief of London just before the Blitz.
Mm-hmm.
And he famously said, there is a science and an art to firefighting. The science can be taught in a fire station, but the art can only be learned. Like a seaman is made by going to sea, a fireman is made by going to fires, as many as possible. And if you take out of it the archaic language, I always say that to recruits, because without experience, you've got nothing. Literally got nothing.
Hmm.
But one thing I'll say to you, and I say this is hopefully making a friend here. My phone is always on for you. If you want someone to talk to, and it's helpful with the 5-hour time difference, because you could call me, but I'll be here for you. If you want to talk about some of the things you've got going on, or if you want to, and I'm not going to propose.
I don't leverage it
enough.
I'll be honest. I need to leverage that more, because you're not the first to offer it. Most people do, and this is the accidental secret of the podcast. This has been the greatest university I've ever could have asked for. I'm astonished at the non-stop, ongoing kindness, generosity, and opportunities. It's like an overarching analogy of everything you've said. If you're willing to put yourself out there and look a bit stupid, you'll be astonished the people that come in to offer you a hand and go, I see what you're trying to do. It's not perfect, and you do keep making little mistakes, but I like what you're trying to do. And if I can help you in any way, then I will do. And I don't take that for granted. I don't leverage it enough. That might be the UK trying to be too polite and, oh, well, Chris is very busy and I don't want to bother him and all this sort of stuff.
You just watch me cancel my entire afternoon. I've cancelled the entire afternoon, but that's how I did it.
But
it was only something for HR.
They'll still be there tomorrow. Mate, thank you so much for your time today. I've really, 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 really enjoyed our conversation. Please send my love to the 4 kids, all the firefighters of the world, all the dispatchers of the world, to your beautiful wife, and to all of the team that have kindly given you to me for a little bit of an hour or so this afternoon. I don't take it for granted. I know your diary is stacked to the absolute brim, and I really, really do appreciate your time today.
Pete, this has been my first podcast, and it's been without doubt the best one I've done so far. I appreciate help.
I'm going to end it on that one. Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, live with intention, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.